All right, hello everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Welcome to my second video. It is currently just almost 5 p.m. on May 5th, which means that by the time this video is out, my first video will be going live. It was scheduled for a 5 p.m. release tonight, just in time for the Leafs game. This video, as you can tell by the title, we're continuing with the playoff series previews. Now with the Carolina Hurricanes and the Washington Capitals second round matchup. Um, Definitely the least exciting matchup in this second round, in my opinion. I am not overly thrilled about this. I'm not like dying to watch any of the games in this matchup. And in turn with that, I'm also just not like I feel like I'm not even as engaged to make like this video. Like I'm so excited for tomorrow because tomorrow is going to be my when I film the Oilers Vegas matchup, and then the day after that will be when I do the Dallas Winnipeg series because obviously the Jets just won yesterday in a thrilling game. And but I'm I feel more prepared to make this video than I was for yesterday. I think knowing all of the things that I wanted to include in my video yesterday in hindsight has made it much easier to kind of put it all together for this video. So I'm really excited. I have everything on my laptop just off to the side here. I'll try not to look away too much, but I mean unfortunately, it's the way it goes. I don't have all these numbers and things memorized in my brain. Um, the first thing, though, that I wanted to do before we move into the actual matchup, I thought I would take a few minutes before we continue. I'm going to throw up a photo of my bracket. Now, this is like the screenshot that I have from when I made it for the first time. So it doesn't have any of the teams like grayed out or anything like that, the teams that have been eliminated. I figure again, just in case you haven't gone to my TikTok page, and I'll leave a link to my TikTok in the description. It's also in it's within like the first like the first minute of my last video. I post a screenshot of the account with the username. Um, but anyways, I did a bracket breakdown video on that channel, on that account, and then I kind of figured why not just throw one here. So you guys can obviously see it up on the screen now. I went 6 for 8 in the first round, which is pretty good. But the only issue was the two teams that got eliminated that I got wrong were my Stanley Cup final matchup, as you guys can see there. I had the Jets winning in 5 games, so I got the games wrong, but got the series right. I severely underestimated the Blues. I had the Avs over the Stars. I had the Avs going to the Stanley Cup final initially. Dallas wins in 7, so I got 7 games right at least. I did pick Vegas over the Wild in 6, so we got the games right and the team. Oilers over LA in 6. Leafs over the Sens in 6, so we're just on a roll there. And then I had the Lightning in 6 over Florida. It ended up being Panthers in 5, and I had the Lightning winning the Stanley Cup this year, so that's just terrible. Washington over the Habs in 5, and Carolina over the Devils in 5, which I got both completely right. So it's a real shame that I had Tampa and Colorado going so far, not just like winning their first round matchup, but going all the way. And you guys can kind of see a spoiler for what my bracket was initially. Obviously, with the fact that Tampa didn't win, we're having a different conversation. I did still think Tampa was going to beat the Leafs, and if you've watched my previous video, you know that I picked the Panthers to beat the Leafs as well. And I think it's. I mean, I guess on the other side of things, I haven't made my Jets Stars video yet. Who knows? Maybe I think the Jets are going to beat Dallas, and the Oilers. I wouldn't necessarily say that my bracket is indicative of what I'm thinking now after watching all these teams play one playoff series. But I just wanted you guys to be able to see the bracket for those of you that haven't visited my TikTok page. And I figure it was kind of nice because it's not a complete spoiler for videos to come. Obviously, with Tampa and Colorado out of the mix, you guys don't know who I have winning the Stanley Cup anymore. So it'll be interesting to see for sure. And with that all out of the way, without further ado, let's dive in to the playoff preview for the Washington Capitals and the Carolina Hurricanes. So like I did in my last video, we'll start this off with a just like me telling you guys who I think is going to win in however many games, and then we'll go through each of like the different things: offense, defense, goaltending, special teams, so on and so forth. Talk about any storylines that I think are kind of interesting to pay attention to, and hopefully I don't look like a fool in a week and a half, 2 weeks when this series is over and gone. So I guess to start, in my opinion, this is the most difficult series to predict. And it's not because I think that not that these teams are bad. Like when I look at the Leafs and Florida series, and I talked about it in my video yesterday, I do think the Leafs are going to put up a fight. But I think the Panthers are kind of clearly the better team based on what I saw in the first round. And that one was pretty easy to just come to the conclusion, like, I think the Panthers are going to win. I do see the flaws in both Washington and Carolina. And I do kind of feel like whichever team wins that Atlantic series, whether it's the Leafs or the Panthers, I think they're going to beat either of these teams in the conference finals to go to the Stanley Cup. I guess that's a bit of a spoiler, but after some mulling it over, I mulled it over today while I was at work, just kind of going over it in my own brain. I'm going to go with Carolina in 7 games. And obviously I picked Carolina in my bracket, as you guys saw on the screen earlier. But again, that bracket was made with just the regular season taken into consideration. We didn't yet see any sort of playoff hockey from these teams, and that changes the way you kind of look at them. So despite this, my opinion on it still hasn't changed. And I do honestly think that part of the reason why I'm still picking Carolina after watching the first round matchups is because when I was having a hard time deciding between the two, I kind of just went with my initial gut thought and opinion and said, you know what? I said Carolina at the beginning. They're both good teams. I could see both of them winning. I'll just pick Carolina. But I do have like reasons for why I think the Hurricanes are going to win the series, and we're going to get into those right now. So again, I am using the Athletic Dom Lucigen's bracket article slash model graphic model. This article is also written by Shayna Goldman and Sean Gentile. I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce his name, but as always, the article will be linked in the description. It's always a great read. If you're trying to educate yourself on advanced stats and whatever, it's great for that. And like I also said in the last video, I establish my own thoughts and opinions. I don't read the article, and unless I'm bringing up a statistic, I won't really reference the article for like opinions or anything. That stuff is usually my own. But I am going to put the graphic up on screen, one of the sides, once again. So as you can see by looking at the chart at this graphic here, I mean it's really not even close based on this model. Now, one thing I will reference from this article, they say it close to the start. There's a series probability at the start of the article, and the probability is 67% in favor of Carolina. So it looks like, based on the model, it's going to be an absolute blowout. But according to the writer, apparently it's not really a surprise that their model like heavily favors Carolina, and the way that like Carolina is constructed as a team really favors like the advanced stats, and that's why they're so favored. But obviously you don't need to buy in too much to what these statistics say, what this graph says. I can't imagine it's going to be that big of a difference between the two teams. But you look at the offensive rating, Carolina has a plus 20 offensive rating. The Caps have a 0. Now, I think upon doing some more research, I mentioned in my last video that I wasn't 100% sure if this chart took into consideration the regular season or the playoffs. And I'm pretty sure that this is the regular season. I think I still genuinely could be wrong. I really don't know, and I wish they made it a little bit more clear. Maybe I'm just an absolute fool who can't realize the difference. But regardless, some of the big things I think that stand out to me in this from the offensive part of this graph, if you look at the core size, kind of like shot generation, and also the danger of those shots, Carolina has a much more like dangerous shot volume and shot selection, But Washington actually has the better shooting percentage with a 10.6% to an 8.6%. So even though Washington isn't like generating as many high danger, high volume chances as Carolina, they're actually converting on more of their opportunities, which is pretty interesting to think about. Defensively, I don't really think it comes as much of a surprise that Carolina rates higher. I mean, I think the Hurricanes have arguably the best decor in the playoffs left standing. I know, like, I really am a big fan of Vegas's decor, but I think part of it as well is a lot of the players on the Hurricanes buy in off defensively, even if they're a forward. And I mean, Jacob Slavin is probably the best shutdown defenseman in hockey and like true defensive defenseman. Um, but Washington, I think a lot of their defensive numbers that you see here, like their expected goals and stuff like that, like the reason why it's not too big of a gap is more so because of how good Logan Thompson played this season, as opposed to how good of a team they actually are defensively. And I think on the other side of it, uh, Peter Kochetkov, who I believe played over 40 of Carolina's games in the regular season this year, he didn't have a season even close to as good as Logan Thompson did. So I think it's kind of a mix of like Carolina has a really strong defensive core and group and somewhat weak goaltending, whereas Washington has a good decor, not bad by any means. I wouldn't call it weak, but they don't like their decor is serviceable and their goaltending was really good this year. And Logan Thompson played great in the first round. I will say I probably would feel a lot more confident in Carolina if Frederick Anderson was playing. I know, and he always gets hurt. That's kind of his thing. And I don't think Kochetkov is like a terrible goaltender, but Carolina, I think, fares better with Anderson in net personally. I believe he's listed as day to day at the moment. So right now, I would expect Kochetkov to start game one, but I really don't know. I know Anderson was in the starters net at practice I believe on Friday afternoon or Friday morning. So who knows? But I think their goaltending fares better with Anderson over Kochetkov. But based on this graphic, it doesn't really look like this series is very close. But like I kind of said, it's just a graphic, and I do think that the actual series is much closer than these numbers indicate. So with that out of the way, let's get into the line combos. As again, I'll have them up on both sides of the screen so you guys can look at them and compare them. First, looking at Washington's, because I'm only looking at one at a time on my screen. We'll start with Washington's group. The first thing, Alexei Protas is listed as a fourth line winger. I believe he only played game 5 of the Montreal series, maybe game 4 and 5, but he was injured. I believe he got cut with a skate, and he missed a majority of the series. Typically, he would be on the Strome Ovechkin line. Protas is, in my opinion, one of the important forwards to kind of keep an eye on in this series for Washington. First of all, is he going to be able to get bigger minutes? Second of all, if he gets bigger minutes, can he keep up his high offensive numbers that he had from the regular season? He was generating a lot of offense. He had a really high shooting percentage. And on top of that, he's also one of the best penalty killers in the NHL, according to this year's stats and some stats that I pulled from the Athletic article as well. So Protas is definitely a guy that could make a huge difference for Washington in this series. Washington has a really solid lineup, a really deep lineup. Majority of the guys in this group do contribute. Connor McMichael was a huge part of the reason why they managed to beat Montreal in 5 games. And Beauvillier, who has been bouncing around from team to team, he found a really nice fit with Strome and Ovechkin on the first line, and he was contributing offensively. But I think the key in this series, if we're looking at one line that's going to make a big difference, it's that second line of Dubois, McMichael, and Wilson. Tom Wilson was a game changer in the series against Montreal. He completely shifted game 4, I believe, when he absolutely plastered Alex Carrier. That completely changed the momentum of that game, and Washington ended up winning it to get that 3-1 stranglehold. So Tom Wilson is 100% a difference maker, and I think that second line as a collective is going to be a big part of why Washington can win this series when it comes down to it. I'm just going to really quickly pull up Carolina, which obviously has been on the screen the whole time for you guys. But again, another really deep offensive team. I mean, you've got, based on these line matchups, you've got Seth Jarvis on the third line. Seth Jarvis is arguably the second best forward on Carolina. So to have him on your third line just goes to show the depth that this team has. But I know that Carolina likes to switch him or Stankoven on that third line with Stahl and Martinuk, so it's kind of up in the air on who's going to be where. But either way, I mean, this is two like these are two very deep forward groups going head to head, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Um, on the going doing the same thing, I do think the offensive line here that's going to make the biggest difference is the Aho line. I mean, if Aho and Svechnikov can generate high amounts of offense, one thing to note is in the event that these line matchups go the way they're listed here, who knows if Strome's line is going to be starting against the Aho line, but the Strome line on Washington actually, they did outscore Montreal. I believe it was 4-1, but they also they did not play well defensively. So in the event that Carolina, and I'm sure Carolina might be looking to have their Aho line match up against Washington's first line, because with Aho and Svechnikov, who were very good last series, you could be looking at Carolina looking to take advantage of that matchup. So I think that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on. And then we'll move into the defense. We'll start with Carolina's. Oh, before we do that, though, if I had to pick offensively, I do want to give the edge to. It's really, really, really close, but I'm going to give the edge to the Carolina Hurricanes. That one might come back to bite me, but I'm going to stick with my gut. I'm going to go Carolina. Um, I just kind of I like the fourth line a bit better on the Hurricanes. I like, Jankowski has been absolutely on fire since he got traded to Carolina. I think Carrier is a proven good player. He's won a Stanley Cup with Vegas. I personally think that they have some more explosive talent. But again, that could change depending on how effective Protoss is and some of those other variables I mentioned with Washington's group. It's very close. It's like 51% to 49% close. Like I'm being serious. Anyways, moving into the defense here, pulling up Carolina's and Washington's as always, but starting with Carolina, I mean, like I said about Slavin, probably the best defensive defenseman in the NHL. Brent Burns can still play despite his age and how long he's been in the league. Jalen Chatfield actually had a pretty solid first round for Carolina, but I know that pairing of Orlov and Chatfield weren't generating a whole lot offensively. But on the other hand, that third pairing of Gostisbehere and Walker was generating a lot offensively and not giving up a whole lot defensively. So, I mean, look, Carolina has a good decor. That's not really a mystery to anybody. There's not a whole lot you can say about this group that hasn't already been said. They have everything. You've got a pure offensive guy in a guy like Gostisbehere. You've got a pure defensive guy in a guy like Slavin. And then you've got a mix of guys who can kind of do both. So I absolutely love Carolina's decor. And then if we go back to Washington, I really should do two tabs for this. Back to Washington. First of all, Martin Feravari is injured. I'm not exactly sure. It says just out on Daily Faceoff, so I'm going to assume he's not going to be playing in the series. I do know what the injury was. I remember reading it when he got injured. I just can't remember. I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure that Chikrin and Feravari typically play together. I don't love a pairing of Chikrin and Carlson. Both of them are more offensively minded defensemen, and I think you could be asking for trouble if you put them on a pairing together. I also know that Alexiev is not like the best and definitely could be exploited on that third pairing, so that's something to keep an eye out for. And then Matt Roy and Rasmus Sandin, I think, is a pretty healthy second pairing, to be honest. But I am going to give the defensive edge to Carolina at the end of the day. I don't really think that's a controversial pick. It's kind of been known that Carolina has one of the stronger decors in the NHL. And again, it has to do with how the forwards buy into that defensive play. And then if we go to the special teams, which I actually have the numbers this time, I should have prepared a bit better for last video, but looking at the power play percentage for the Carolina Hurricanes in the playoffs of all teams eliminated and still going, Carolina sits at the second. Well, actually, this is just a summary for all stats. I'm sorry. This is everything. But their power play percentage is 31.6 through the first round. So really, really good power play. Was clicking against the Devils. Their penalty kill percentage was 100%. The New Jersey Devils were the only team in the NHL playoffs this season to not score a power play goal in the first round. So that is pretty remarkable. And yes, obviously Jack Hughes was hurt, but they still had good players on their power play who could have scored a goal. So it's pretty remarkable that Carolina went 5 games without allowing a penalty, a power play goal against, and they also had a good power play. Washington had a 23.1% power play against a weaker Montreal team, and they did have a 66.7% penalty kill. So it's pretty clear as day based on the first round numbers that Carolina is going to win the special teams matchup here. It obviously was one round. Who knows how it's going to go? All I can do is look at these numbers, develop opinions, and share them with you guys. I'm giving Carolina the special teams matchup. And you're probably kind of thinking to yourself, well, Owen, if you have Carolina better offensively, defensively, special teams, why do you have this being a 7-game series? The reason for that, my friends, is because of the goaltending. I trust Logan Thompson way more than Kochetkov, and also the offense is, like I said, it's kind of a toss-up, to be completely honest. I should have given it a draw, if I'm being completely honest, but the goaltending is definitely going to Washington. Logan Thompson, with 43 games played this year, he is rocking with a 2.49 goals against average, which is really good, and then a 910 save percentage, which is also above average. It's slightly above average, which, I mean, honestly, a lot of the goalies in the NHL fall in and around those numbers. I am looking at Kochetkov's stats because I would expect him to start game one. Maybe I should pull up Frederik Andersen's just in case. But Andersen, all you guys need to know about Frederik Andersen is he had a very good first round against the Devils. As far as I'm concerned, statistically, he had a solid outing. I could pull that up on try to find a chart really quickly that has that. Just give me one moment. But to talk about Kochetkov in the meantime, he's rocking a 2.6 goals against average, so a little bit worse than Thompson, but an 898 save percentage, which is significantly worse than Thompson. So that's kind of the reason why I give the edge to, not really the edge, I give the goaltending to Washington. Now, looking at moneypuck.com, they have Frederik Andersen ranked as the number 3 goalie from the first round. The minimum, you have to have at least 2 games played. Logan Thompson comes in second. So Kochetkov, by the way, is 15th. So there's a massive difference between Thompson and Kochetkov. Frederik Andersen, again, he is a big difference maker. Like, if he can come in game one, maybe even game two, like, that is huge for Carolina. I don't think a lot of people like to, dump on him because he gets hurt really easily and stuff like that, but he's still a really good goaltender who can make a big difference for the Carolina Hurricanes. So just to kind of close this one out, again, I think the big difference makers could be Tom Wilson or Protas for Washington, but mainly that whole Wilson line. I think that is those, like, the Wilson and Protas to me are the X factors in this series. You could also argue Logan Thompson is an X factor just because if he can play out of this world, he could really help win this series for the Washington Capitals. Looking at Carolina, I think, the level that Sebastian Aho can produce at is going to be massive. I'd say that he's a pretty big X factor. And then I guess you have to give their goaltending an X factor, like whether it's Andersen or Kochetkov. In the event that it's Kochetkov, he's an even bigger X factor because you're not expecting as good of a performance from him as you would be from Frederik Andersen. So I think Kochetkov is a huge X factor for Carolina in this series in the event that he needs to play more than one game or at all. But with that said, I have Carolina winning this series in 7 games. I can't say that I'm feeling overly confident in that, despite the way that I broke this series down. But I guess we'll spin back on this video in a little while and we'll see. As always, guys, if you're new to the channel, if you've been following me on TikTok, I would always appreciate any subscribers. And if you leave your comments down below what you guys think about this series, who you think is going to win. And if you like the video, please feel free to leave a thumbs up for that. It's always very much appreciated. I'm going to keep pumping out the content here. We've got 2 more series preview videos to go, and then I'll pick and choose different topics as the playoffs continue to make videos on outside of like series previews and reviews. Um, and then, we'll have a bit more of a discussion as we near the end of the playoffs about, the type of content that I'm going to be making in the summer. Obviously, hockey content's going to slow down a lot, so we're going to have to really pick and choose what we're doing. Yes, there's draft coverage and all of that fun stuff, which, by the way, the draft lottery is at 7 o'clock tonight, just before the Leafs game starts. So I'm really excited for that to see who's going to get a chance to pick first overall. And I'll make a video on TikTok talking about it. Maybe even I'll probably make a draft projection video as well before that starts here on YouTube. So if any of that sounds exciting or enticing to you, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. And I will catch you guys all in the next one.